fabulous day here in Southern Ontario, which puts us all in a great mood. This is the Sportsline Podcast. We appreciate you watching or listening. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Well, as I say on a daily basis, this podcast is a space for the many extraordinary athletes, coaches, executives, and broadcasters that got their start right here in the Golden Horseshoe. But today we need to talk about something a little different. Now, in the quickly evolving landscape of the workplace, the importance of fostering a diverse, inclusive environment is often overlooked, consciously or unconsciously. Well, folks, that same mindset must be front and center in the sports world, on and off the playing surface. On today's podcast, we talk to Dean Barnes, who's chosen to put hockey in the spotlight and has been recognized by the National Hockey League and junior leagues to celebrate Black hockey history and its rich contributions of Black hockey players. Let's bring in Dean. I'll tell you, it has been a long, ultra long time. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, I think it's been decades, Bubba.
It really has been. I mean, folks, I'm going to be straight up hockey and honest here. In my announcing days back on cable TV, you were the first, and I'm not going to include the National Hockey League, the first Black hockey player I had ever seen in the Halton region. And I'm glad to see that that's changed. But you have taken your experience and just expanded on it and done something real serious and I think wonderful for the community and for hockey itself.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Bubba, and having me on because I've received a lot of support in my life. A lot of people supported me in the fabulous experience we had, and our great game of hockey was pretty much our national sport. And I've just been wanting to give back and ensure that as the changing demographics of our country has changed, just to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to play the game and feel safe and feel welcomed. I'm
going to go back to those days. I don't think there was too many Black people, first of all, Blacks in Halton, maybe even Hamilton. That has changed. Why hockey? It could have been so many other sports, often associated with basketball. That's sort of the mindset, especially at that time. Why did you choose hockey?
I was just an all-around athlete, and I wanted to delve myself in lots of different experiences. So it was soccer, hockey. I played road hockey with my brother behind Maple Horse Elementary School at the time. I went for my first skating opportunity with my sister at Kiwanis Arena, as it was called back then. And I just wanted to perform well in anything I could experience. And hockey was all around us. Hockey was, you'd come home from school, you're playing road hockey, you'd be playing in between recess at elementary school. And I was just fortunate at that time to get the experience of learning how to skate and performing well and excelling it. And from there, it just went from house league and to rep hockey and other experiences. But I think everyone was around me was playing hockey, and I was fortunate to have the opportunity to play it.
And you took it to a far level as well.
Well, I was fortunate enough to play, the highest level as a minor hockey, rep hockey. And then after rep hockey, I was fortunate enough, I think you were broadcasting at the time, we had some rivalries in high school hockey and played, almost got to the point of officer championship, but won a Halton final.
Aldershot
Aces. And then after that, I still had the love for the game and tried out and made the Junior B Kitchener Rangers at the time, Kitchener Dutchmen, at the time, and then played university hockey for a season at University of Waterloo.
I'll ask you a personal question if you don't mind answering this. At that time, because we're talking about a completely different time, 90s, did you experience any racist, any I won't even go as far as racism, but just sort of identified as someone different?
Yeah, definitely all the way up had experiences. Fortunately for me, as I've learned through my podcast, my experience would pale in comparison to many other players who are racialized and former NHL players for that matter. But I found at the time I was always supported by my coaches, my teammates, never had a situation where they were not welcoming. But at that time in hockey, many things were said on the ice, and there seemed to be no restrictions on what was said to anyone to get under anyone's skin. So fortunately for me, my experience was positive. I think that's probably given me the energy to sort of amplify and support others to ensure things are safe and inclusive for everyone.
How did that make you feel?
How does it make me feel? What, like
at that time? How did that make you feel to hear words that you weren't going to hear at home?
Oh, very, very, very tough. And I think you have to have that resilience to sort of put that aside and fight through. And I know that for many people, probably would have been something they may have turned them away from particular sports. But for that matter, it wasn't just hockey. I know on the soccer pitch, I was a rep soccer player. Heard lots of things there back in the day, and I think we're in a better place now in society that we have protocols in place, and people are much more educated and informed to sort of interrupt and respond to these situations.
I'm going to bring up words like diversion, inclusion, breaking barriers. That vocabulary we were not very familiar with at that time, and maybe not up until recent times. Why are those words important to you?
Yeah, everyone should just have ability to feel like there's so many friendships you get in a sport of hockey, and no one should feel restricted as a parent or a fan or a teammate to feel included. So, I mean, those words, they mean what they do to me now, what they did back then. That you, Bubba, yourself, if we played on a sports team, we just want to feel that we belong, and we don't want to feel like we're different. And you can be different, but you don't want to be treated differently.
Mm-hmm. So how have you attacked that? And this is where we get into what you're up to right now. You've made up your mind to make this very important in the sport of hockey.
Yeah, I've just been trying to be an amplifier and influencer to tell stories of players who are in the game right now and being successful, either through the Canadian Hockey League, which is my recent project, and the past project was working with the National Hockey League. And I actually interviewed 29 players, former NHL players who had played at least one NHL game. Some had lengthy careers, like Tony McKegney, who was like a top 20 scorer for Buffalo in the 1970s and 80s, and players like Anthony Stewart, who are doing lots of work right now with hockey equality. So I've made it my mission to tell the untold stories and to normalize what it means to have representation in hockey. So a young person can be inspired to say, I see that player out there. It's just that much easier to enter the sport when you feel like you're represented. Because the truth is, we know that many sports have more representation than others. And one would think, again, in a country like Canada that's changed so much for people of color, we just want those entry points to be there for people to participate in the game.
When you talk to these former athletes and, again, guys that played at the highest level, when you approach them with what you wanted to talk about, what was their reception like?
Very receptive. I think almost therapeutic for them to have a voice, to share that the impact and contributions they made to the game. Difficult at times for them to share some of the negative experiences they had. But all in all, for the most part, they're wanting to be role models, and they're wanting to make it known the impact they've had on the game. And when I initially did my card collection, there was 100 players that were black biracial players, and not many people felt that many had actually stepped on the ice, because there's so few at so many points in time that it doesn't seem like there's many players. And in fact, right now, the project I'm doing with Canadian Hockey League, we're interviewing Indigenous and racialized players who have played in the league, and many of them I'm speaking to right now are up to be potential draft picks in next year's draft, like Malcolm Spence, who plays for the Erie Otters, and Keishon Aitchison plays for the Barrie Colts. And but that may not be known. So it's my job to let people know who's out there, who's playing the game, so it can impact the story's amplification at so many levels.
You talked about this hockey card collection, and I had to do some research because you had mentioned something about a hockey card collection. And I was like, yeah. And then I went looking and I went digging, and I thought to myself, got a hockey card collection of black hockey players, and I started to list all the people that I could think of. The list wasn't as big, but you've reached 100. Wow, where did you get this research from? Or again, were people stepping forward, were helping you out, acquiring these cards? Because this is part of something that you are promoting as well.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I grew up in the 1970s, and I was really mindful of players who had entered the league over a period of time. We're talking, not aging myself, we're talking decades. So
I'm right with you, buddy.
so it's obvious, the Grant Fures, the Ray Neufelds, the Tony McKegney's from that era. Obviously, Willie O'Ree, I had the privilege of interviewing him. He was the first black player in 1958 suit up the Boston Bruins. And Bill Riley played with the Winnipeg Jets. So I knew that era. And then I was also mindful of watching, what happened in the 90s with the PK Subbans, the Wayne Simmons, all those players. So it wasn't that hard for me being a keen sports fan and monitoring things over time.
When you see the game now, and it's still changing, I'll advance it to where we are right now. When you watch the game and see the increasing amount of black hockey players and ones with incredible skill and excellence, does that make you proud?
Oh, it makes me so proud, and I can only imagine the people much younger than me, what a difference it makes them feeling inspired, that just that little extra nudge of being inspired. The Canadian Hockey League players I interviewed recently, like to a person, many of them talked about the difference Wayne Simmons and the Subbans, PK Subban, the brothers, made a difference just seeing them out on the ice. It's just phenomenal.
They don't realize that. And I think we as broadcasters, you at what you do, anyone that what they do, what a role model. And we use that word as this big thing. But it doesn't even need to be a big factor. It could be just someone saying, I want to do what that person is doing. And that inspiration can lead to so many different things. So you've set up a program. You're talking to the National Hockey League. You're talking to the Canadian Hockey League. When you approach these leagues, what was their reception like?
Really, really receptive. The project with the National Hockey League started because a writer, Bill Douglas, did a story on my card collection. And he put that on the website and published it by the National Hockey League, and a lot of media were really interested in that story. And that led to me being asked to be in the National Hockey League Mobile Diversity Museum. So for a couple of years, I've had various projects where my cards have gone across all the National Hockey League cities in North America, and I've been able to visualize and see people walk in and the impact that it's had them to see a young person or adult fan of any group learn about the history of players. And then I also have to thank the Canadian Hockey League, because most recently they've been really receptive, inviting me to the Memorial Cup last year and showcasing my Canadian Hockey League cards of diverse players in their pop-up history museum. So really receptive. Met a lot of caring, inspirational people along the way. They're doing different type of work than me. I'm doing the influencing and amplification work. They are doing mentoring work. They are doing coaching clinics. They're breaking down barriers to invite many people into the game. So it's really inspiring to see.
Well, it's really inspiring for me to hear. And I think that the conversation, we're always talking about the conversation has to continue. And you have found a way for the conversation to continue through your podcast.
Absolutely. And it's just in time. It's really the fact that this is happening is really incredible. And I can't tell you, I'm having to work a little hard now to keep up with the number of players that are joining the Canadian Hockey League. And I went to see a young man named Malcolm Spence, who plays with the Erie Otters. Originally grew up in Burlington and played rep hockey, and he's in the top list of players. And he's going to be playing in the U.S. Canadian Challenge, which is actually happening tonight in London and tomorrow night in Oshawa. It pits the best players of the CHL against the U.S. prospects. But I think just seeing that talent out there and seeing when he talks about other players on his team he's played with, and when I went to watch him play a few weeks ago in Niagara Falls, there was another black player newly on the team from the Erie Otters. So there's 3 black players on the Erie Otters, and again, probably never would have happened not so long ago. So.
Well, I think it's incredible. I think it was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. I think the International Hockey League, I think it might have been the LA Kings farm team, and it was the first time a complete black line. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really cool. But I also think in my head, it'll be really cool when this is not a conversation in itself.
Exactly. And I think just the very nature of you inviting me here and CH and the other leagues being behind, Black history, inclusive history doesn't have to happen in a particular month. These conversations should be happening all the time, and we shouldn't be afraid to break down and look for barriers and look for opportunities for people to feel and part of the game. So really appreciate that.
Well, and I think the next step here to me, and I think hockey, I think this has been a challenge for hockey, and I don't know why. We have, the gay community, which I think has had a struggle with the National Hockey League. You have some players that want to be involved in celebratory nights and don't want to wear the tricolored stick, and it's been, I don't know. To me, there's still a conversation to still be had there. And I know another thing that you're also focusing on is Indigenous players and us as Canadians, and how important it is for young Indigenous hockey players, male or female. And I say this too for the gay community. With male or female, hockey is now being played by everyone.
Yeah, and look what's happening with the PWHL and just the growth in that game and the fan base, and understanding that this year, I think their season opens up soon.
Yeah,
and
it's
going
Friday.
to have a sellout Coliseum. So just when you see that happening and the number of young girls that are looking up and seeing stars to play the game and what that's doing to the growth, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. So how do we make it better for, as we talked about, and I know this Indigenous sort of, mindset is something that you guys are locked on as well too. Again, is it the same approach that you're taking with the, sort of the Black inclusion that also, that our natives love playing the game too?
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to another card collector named Cardno, and he actually started a collection even before me of Indigenous players, and he lists 100 players who have played the game, the Brian Chatres and players like that, and it's multi-tiered. People are having to do different things: tell stories, do coaching clinics, do mentorship groups with players, reduce costs in the game. Different levels of exposures, broadcasters. We talked earlier about senior management opportunities in the game. It's multifaceted, and I think that those at different levels of the hockey game have to be spearheading these efforts. As well, I think for people that are not of color, there's many things people can do to be allies to support the efforts, and just the little things in terms of opening up doors for opportunities can make a big difference.
And that's exactly where I was going. It's like, well, okay, people like yourself, people like myself, people of color, if you want to put it that way, can go out there and try as hard as you can. But if there's not acceptance from the large majority, are you finding that you are on the overall, getting acceptance from the majority community?
Yeah, I think we're still on that journey,
right.
And I think keeping the conversation going, keeping the education awareness, lets people know that there's intentional things they can do that are making a difference. And if we all do those things, what a difference it makes in terms of the opportunities for young people. So I think everyone has to be action oriented, and it's not just the people that are racialized, it's everyone has to play a role.
And the reason why I bring up that question is because I think for whatever reason in the workplace, yes, that has been, something, a conversation that a lot of people are talking about, inclusion, mixing of races, all of this kind of thing. But for whatever reason in sports, it's kind of its own separate category, right? Oh, there's no racism. We all get along. But yet it does exist. And I think identification and moving forward. And I also have heard the words from white friends that say, what do I need to do? And are you feeling that same sort of question? Like, what can I do to be better?
Yeah, and I think everyone just has to look inwardly at themselves and become educated, read books, have conversations. That's the part that makes a difference, that we're all in this together. We all have differences, and we understand our differences better, then we're a stronger community. And circling back to when we started the conversation earlier, I was talking about the lifelong friendships I've got through hockey, and I'm just using hockey, but just thinking sports in general, how many intersecting identities and friendships have been established with teammates and fans and parents through that experience. So I think we have to listen to all the voices and look inwardly as well, and also have conversations with those who are not like us.
Well, it's funny but you say that because I could think of, my group of friends that the conversations about high school football still continue to this day, 30, 40 years later? Like, it's amazing. And you're right about the how it can bring people together. It creates friendships and bonds. And I think that's one of the wonderful things we always do, brag about sports. Time for you to brag about your podcast. Where can we find it? How often does it come out? All the details, please.
Yeah, thanks. The podcast is called My Hockey Hero, and you can find it on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Mm-hmm. We're in season 3 right now. Mm-hmm. We're specifically interviewing Indigenous and racialized players in Canadian Hockey League. So some recent guests I've had on were Keyshawn Aitchison, who's also playing in the Prospects game, and prior guests are Malcolm Spence, who I mentioned earlier, Donovan McCoy, who plays for now the captain of the Sudbury Wolves, Teos Jordan, who played for Owen Sound, and he's now gone over to the Quebec League. And so you can find it there. We're doing basically a few episodes per month, and in partnership with the Canadian Hockey, they are promoting the stories for us of the players.
Well, Dean, I think it's amazing what you're doing here. It takes a pioneer like yourself. I mean, most of us, I could be included in that too, sometimes just let other people do things. And you are one of the leaders in the community that we all need, black, white, and doesn't matter, that we do need leaders in the community, and you're certainly one of them. And to think that I've known you for, better part of 30 years in my life, and seeing what you're doing right now makes me really proud, and I know I'm not the only one saying that. So congratulations, continue to do the good work, and we love what you're doing.
Appreciate for having me on. Hopefully the invite's there to come on in the future to give a little checkup on how we're doing.
Absolutely. That is a guarantee.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you have something to say, please comment. Hey, folks, our popular Christmas toy drive is underway, and we do have a new main sponsor this year. It's JR Toys, located in B-Town. For any toy that is purchased at JR Toys, a donation will be made to the drive. So it's like a double shot donation. And of course, there is the e-transfer option as you see on the screen. In addition, believe it or not, hair dryers, curling irons, and body care packs from your local drugstore, they're in huge demand. So with your donation and help, we're going to be helping more folks all over the Hamilton region and Brant County. Thank you so very much for your assistance. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, we thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.